They said the walls of Buckingham Palace never talk, but what if this time they didn't just whisper, they cracked? Because something explosive didn't just happen behind those iron gates, it detonated. And at the center of it all, King Charles III, Queen Camilla, and a secret so dangerous it was never meant to be touched for 100 years. This wasn't a scandal that leaked. This wasn't a rumor that slipped out. This was a controlled implosion, triggered from inside the palace itself. And it all began with something missing. At first, it looked routine, quiet, boring even, a standard audit, papers, signatures, vault checks, nothing the public would ever care about. But inside that silence, something didn't add up. A brooch, gone. A necklace, vanished, not misplaced, not relocated, missing. And not just any items. We're talking about artifacts tied to the very soul of the monarchy. Pieces worn by Queen Elizabeth II herself during defining moments of history. Moments of power. Moments of grief. Moments the entire world watched. Now pause. Think about that. These weren't accessories. These were symbols. Memory, frozen in gold and stone. And then came the detail that changed everything. Two journals. Not official records. Not public documents, private writings, handwritten, personal, dangerous. Words from a queen who had seen everything, written when she was alone, when the world had shut down, when even the strongest institutions felt fragile. And those journals, they were never supposed to be opened. Not now, not by anyone alive today. Locked away under strict protection until a future generation, far removed from the emotions of today, could read them without bias. So when they disappeared, this stopped being a theft. It became a betrayal. Because there was no break-in, no smashed glass, no forced entry. The vault opened like it always does, calmly, obediently, for someone who had the right access. Let that sink in. This wasn't an outsider. This was someone inside. And that's when King Charles III moved. Fast, silent, surgical. No press, no leaks, just a quiet internal investigation led by people who don't miss details. And the first crack in the story? A guard. 3:49 am. Not his shift, not his time, not his place to be, but he was there, inside the restricted vault area, moving where he shouldn't, doing what he couldn't explain. At first, he denied everything. Of course he did, but pressure does strange things to people. And slowly, the truth started leaking out. A phone call, late night, internal line, someone who knew him, knew his personal struggles, knew exactly how to push him. They didn't threaten him, but they didn't force him, but they convinced him. And here's where it gets chilling. That call didn't come from outside the palace. It came from inside. Not just inside. From the private residential wing of Queen Camilla. Now, suddenly, this wasn't a mystery. This was a trail, and it was leading straight to the very top. But the real shock? It hadn't even arrived yet, because while investigators were tracing calls and interrogating staff, something unexpected happened. Something small, quiet, almost invisible. A staff member cleaning a room. A simple task. Routine. Forgettable. Until she noticed something off. A jewelry box. Slightly misplaced, slightly heavier than it should be. Just enough to trigger instinct. And instinct changed everything. She opened it. Not from the top. From the bottom. A hidden compartment, and inside, the missing Sapphire Jubilee brooch, the same one worn by Queen Elizabeth II during one of the most iconic moments of her reign. Hidden. Concealed. Inside a private room, in Camilla's wing. At that moment, the story stopped being speculation. It became undeniable. And within hours, that brooch was sitting on a desk, in front of a king. No cameras, no witnesses, just two people, and the truth sitting between them. King Charles III didn't shout. He didn't explode. He didn't need to, because silence in moments like that is louder than anything. One question. That's all he asked. How did it get there? But the question wasn't really a question. It was a line in the sand, because by that point, he already knew. The calls, the guard, the vault, the box. All roads led to one place. And now, it wasn't about discovery anymore. It was about consequence. What happens when the person you trusted most becomes the center of the breach? What happens when love collides with duty? What happens when protecting the crown means destroying something personal? That answer came fast. Too fast. Because later that same day, a meeting was called. Not a casual discussion, not a family chat, a war room. 5 people, one table, no escape from what was about to be decided. And at the center of it all sat Queen Camilla. Facing not the public. Not the media. But the truth. The door closed, and with it, any illusion that this could be quietly buried. Inside that room sat King Charles III, Prince William, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and directly across from them, the woman at the center of it all, Queen Camilla. No aides, no scripts, no escape, just evidence, and silence thick enough to suffocate. Because this wasn't just a discussion, it was a reckoning. And it started with facts. Cold, precise, unforgiving. The missing items, the broken protocol, the vault access at 3:49 am, the manipulated guard, the internal call traced back to her wing, and finally, the brooch. That brooch, lying on the table like a silent accusation that didn't need words. Everyone in that room already knew what it meant, but still, she spoke. Calm, measured, almost too controlled. She rejected the word theft. Not stolen, she said, promised. A private understanding with Queen Elizabeth II. A quiet assurance. Something never written, never documented, but in her mind, real. But here's the problem. The monarchy doesn't run on private understandings. It runs on law. And law doesn't bend for whispers. The room didn't react. No one argued. No one interrupted. Because they all knew this explanation wasn't enough. Not even close. And then, the conversation shifted. Away from the jewelry. Towards something far more dangerous. The journals. Because the brooch could be explained, twisted, framed as misunderstanding. But the journals? There was no safe explanation for those. And this time, she didn't deny it. She admitted taking them. Just like that. No hesitation. And the reason she gave? Protection. Let that sit for a second. She claimed she removed them to protect the monarchy, to protect her husband, to protect the future from something written in the past. Because according to her, those pages held doubts, concerns, fears written by Queen Elizabeth II in her final months. Words that, if read out of context decades from now, could shake the crown. Damage it. Rewrite how history sees everything. Now, here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because maybe, just maybe, that fear wasn't completely irrational. But the method, the secrecy, the manipulation, the midnight call, the hidden compartment. That doesn't look like protection. That looks like panic. And panic always reveals something deeper. So the real question hanging in that room wasn't just what she did, it was why. Did she actually read those journals? Did she see something so explosive, so destabilizing that she was willing to risk everything? Or was she acting on fear alone? Fear of what might be written. Fear of what could be revealed. Fear of losing everything she had fought for. Because those are two very different stories. One is calculated. The other is desperate. And as that silence stretched across the room, everyone felt it. Prince William didn't speak, but his reaction said enough. Tension, tightened expression. A man already thinking beyond the moment to the future of the crown. Princess Anne remained still, watching, absorbing, measuring every word. Because regardless of intention, one truth was unavoidable. The line had been crossed. Not accidentally, not unknowingly. But deliberately. And then King Charles III stood up, slowly, and everything changed. Because this was no longer a husband speaking, this was a king delivering judgment. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't show anger, but what he said cut deeper than any outburst ever could. He reminded the room, these items were protected by law, not suggestion, not tradition. Law. Nothing could be touched. Nothing moved. Nothing opened. Not for decades. Not even by family. And then came the line that sealed it. No one, no matter who they are, gets to decide which parts of a monarch's legacy should be hidden. Not even out of love. And in that moment, it was over. Because the decision had already been made. And when it came clean. Immediate. Final. Queen Camilla. Stripped of duties. Removed from public life. Ceremonial role. Gone. Future claim over any royal collection. Gone. Everything she had spent decades building. Erased in a single ruling. No argument. No appeal. Just silence. Because that's how power really works inside those walls. Quietly. Decisively. Irreversibly. And the most brutal part, he chose the crown. Over her. Because history will remember that moment. Not as a scandal, but as a line drawn. A king proving that the monarchy comes before everything. Even love. Even marriage. Even the person sitting closest to the throne. The next morning, she was gone. No announcement. No farewell. No cameras capturing a final glance. Just absence. And inside Buckingham Palace, everything shifted. Her name disappeared from records. Engagements canceled. Connections severed. Like she had never been there at all. But outside, chaos. Shockwaves across media. Debate exploding everywhere. Was this justice or something colder? And through it all, one thing remained untouched. The journals. Returned. Sealed. Locked away once again, but no longer just documents. Now, they are a mystery. A threat. A question that refuses to die. Because whatever was inside those pages, it was powerful enough to make a queen consort risk everything. To make a king destroy his own marriage. And to turn a quiet palace into the center of something far darker than anyone expected. The vault is closed. The story isn't. Because one question still lingers, louder than anything else. What did Queen Elizabeth II write that someone was so afraid of? And when those pages finally open, will they explain everything or destroy everything all over again?